Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're plunging into, well, a really fascinating and fast-moving field, the rise of robotics and artificial intelligence in China.
hmm
We've got a compelling report dated May 17th, 2025, that digs deep into the Chinese government's strategy here, their ambitions, and the progress they're making.
Yeah, it's quite revealing.
So think of this as your shortcut, really, to understanding this pretty pivotal shift.
Exactly. This report, it really sheds light on a significant turning point in China's tech path. Our goal today, for you, the learner, is to pull out the core insights. What's happening, why it matters, maybe some less obvious implications.
But without getting bogged down in all the jargon.
Precisely. Keep it clear and focused.
Okay, let's start with what's driving this dramatic shift. The report points to a real change in focus from the Chinese government. I mean, for years it seemed like the internet giants were the main story, right?
That's a very keen observation. The report does point to a conscious, active move, boosting the robotics and AI sectors. And there seem to be several connected reasons for this.
Right.
One big factor mentioned is, well, a slowdown in the real estate market, and also maybe weaker consumer demand for just general products.
Ah, okay. So looking for new growth engines.
Exactly. That naturally creates a search for, new ways to expand the economy.
Makes sense. You can't lean on one thing forever. And the report also mentions the global buzz around AI, right? Especially the success of that Chinese AI firm, Deep Blue,
Yeah.
Shenlan.
Absolutely. That seems to have been a real catalyst. The worldwide excitement for AI combined with, seeing real results from domestic players like Deep Blue.
Getting good results.
Yeah,
today.
achieving what the report calls pretty significant capabilities. That definitely added confidence and, momentum to the whole push.
Right. A feeling of, we can do this too.
Both opportunity and, I think, strategic necessity.
Okay, on that point, strategic necessity. The report mentions how China saw the U.S. model, huge success with internet companies. But China seems to be choosing a slightly different path now. With this heavy investment in AI and robotics, what's the thinking there?
The report suggests a couple of key things. First, China sees developing its own strong AI capabilities as just vital for long-term economic security, tech independence.
Right.
And second, you can't ignore the trade situation with the U.S. Those tensions have likely, sped up the government's commitment to self-reliance in these critical areas, AI, robotics.
Pushing them to build up their own companies.
Exactly, empowering domestic firms so they aren't dependent on others for the really core technologies.
Yeah, that's a powerful reason. If you think supply chains might get disrupted, you build your own. And it's not just talk, is it? The report mentions serious money being put behind this.
Precisely. The government of Shenzhen, a huge tech hub, obviously attends it, has apparently announced a really significant investment, 7 billion yuan, specifically to nurture innovation and development in AI and robotics.
That kind of money sends a message.
It really does. It shows their priorities and gives a huge boost to development.
Yeah.
That level of investment can create big ripple effects, attract talent, help startups grow, build a whole ecosystem.
Okay, so the government backing is definitely there. Now, what is this investment actually creating? What are we seeing on the ground? The report gives a kind of framework for robotics development, breaking it down into stages. Can you walk us through that?
Sure. It outlines basically 3 fundamental stages. First is creating the basic parts, the physical structure, the robot's body, if you like.
The hardware.
The hardware, yes. Then the second stage is perception and decision-making, the brain, essentially. That's where AI is key.
Makes sense.
And the third stage involves interaction, how robots engage with the world, maybe even with people socially. And the report says China's making real progress across all 3.
And it highlights Deep Blue, or Shenlan, particularly in that second stage, the brain part. Sounds like they've made some big leaps in robot intelligence.
Yeah, what's really notable is the reports claim that Deep Blue is developing AI that can handle complex instructions and in some areas potentially reach what they call human-level performance.
Human level, that's quite something.
And it signifies a real jump in the sophistication of the AI driving these machines, allowing them to do much more complex things.
That's a bold claim. But the report also mentions a counterpoint, doesn't it? That maybe China doesn't yet have that kind of broad foundational AI model like, say, OpenAI has built. How do those two fit together?
That's a really important nuance, yeah. So while China might not have one single giant do-everything model like GPT yet, the report stresses that Chinese companies are incredibly quick and innovative in very specific practical applications.
Ah, okay.
Their strategy seems more focused on making highly effective AI for particular problems. specific industries, specific tasks.
Like specialized tools versus a general Swiss Army knife.
Kind of, yeah. Very good tools for specific jobs, maybe, rather than one general tool that does lots of things okay. More results-oriented.
That makes sense, especially in a fast-moving market. Now, what about the hurdles? What challenges are Chinese robotics companies still facing, according to the report?
It points out a couple of big ones. One is the dependence on really good training data, high-quality data.
Garbage in, garbage out.
Exactly. Any AI is only as good as the data it learns from. So getting access to large, diverse, well-labeled data sets is still a major task. The other key thing is the difficulty of handling complex physical interactions.
In the real world.
Yes, in the messy, unpredictable real world, not just in simulations. Getting a robot to reliably pick things up, walk on uneven ground, react to unexpected bumps, that's still a huge engineering challenge.
That's where, I guess, degrees of freedom comes in. The report mentions that. For those of us not building robots, what does that actually mean? Why is it important?
Right. So think of degrees of freedom as basically the number of ways a robot or part of it can move independently. Your arm, for instance, has about 7 degrees of freedom, allows for all this complex movement.
Okay.
So the more degrees of freedom a robot has, generally, the more flexible and adaptable it can be for tricky tasks needing fine motor skills.
And the report mentions a specific robot, Unitree G1, from Unitree Robotics, and it says it has something like 60 degrees of freedom. That sounds insane.
It is a very high number, yeah.
Yeah.
It suggests potential for incredibly complex, nuanced movements, like human-like agility.
Look, do you always need that?
Well, that's the crucial point the report also makes. For many everyday commercial uses, you probably don't. Simpler robots, fewer degrees of freedom, can often do specific jobs like moving a box from A to B very effectively. And cheaper.
Right, finding the right tool for the job.
It's that balance between complexity and what the task actually needs.
You don't need a humanoid robot just to bring you a pizza. Speaking of which, the report gets into some real-world examples of where these robots are actually being used in China now. Let's get into that.
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting, seeing the practical side. The report talks a lot about food delivery robots, especially in big cities like Shanghai and Shenzhen. Companies like Meituan are apparently really scaling up their fleets of these autonomous delivery bots.
And there was that statistic, Meituan's robots handling something like 10% of their deliveries.
Around 10%.
That's not just a pilot program. That's significant integration.
Exactly. That scale shows a certain maturity and, public acceptance of the tech in daily life. For you, the learner, that scale is important context.
Definitely.
And beyond food, the report mentions trials for robots doing other deliveries, package drop-offs in neighborhoods, even in parks.
So becoming more visible in public spaces.
A growing interaction between these autonomous systems and just regular people.
Almost like seeing those shared bikes everywhere becomes normal. And then the big one, autonomous driving. The report touches on that too.
Yes. It points to the sophisticated tech being used, cameras, sensors for high-precision mapping and navigation. Enabling self-driving vehicles. That's another area with huge government support and fierce competition in China, aiming to really change transportation.
Okay, so pulling this all together, what are the big implications here? This rapid progress in Chinese robotics and AI. What's the main takeaway for you from the report?
Well, looking at the bigger picture, the way these technologies are being integrated, it feels like a really fundamental shift happening in China. It's not just about cool gadgets. It could reshape manufacturing, logistics, how people live and work.
A major transformation.
I think so.
And while the report is clear about challenges remaining...
Oh, absolutely. There are still hurdles.
The overall direction seems to be rapid progress and more adoption.
Definitely. You've got that strong government push, the fast pace of innovation from companies like Deep Blue and Unitree, and this real focus on practical uses. It really suggests Chinese robotics and AI firms are going to be increasingly important players globally.
Their speed seems key.
Their ability to iterate quickly, learn from real-world deployment, that seems like a big advantage.
Okay, so to quickly recap for you, the learner. China's really pushing forward in robotics and AI. It's backed by serious government strategy. You're seeing innovation from companies like Deep Blue and Unitree. And crucially, it's moving into the real world. Delivery, maybe driving soon.
Which leaves us with a pretty big thought to consider, doesn't it? Given the scale of China's ambition, the investment level, how might these advances change not just daily life in China, but the whole global tech landscape?
What happens next?
Exactly. What unexpected uses might pop up? what broader societal changes could follow as these technologies get better and, well, just blend into our world.
Something to keep an eye on.
Definitely a space to watch very closely.